On behalf of Merlin's Lab, I'm proud to announce our newest supplement, Merlin's Silver Solution. Having anti-parasitic, antibacterial, immune boosting, and anti-inflammatory effects. It aids in cell regeneration, is a powerful antioxidant, and is also pet-friendly. Purify your water and get rid of pesky odors without the harm of chemical fragrances. Visit the site at merlinslab.myshopify.com for more. Check out the site now and get your own 7 ppm Merlin's Lab Silver Solution. Use code JOURNEY2TRUTH for 10% off store-wide. We here at Merlin's Lab thank Journey to Truth for the opportunity to share this message with you. Please enjoy the show.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. So big announcement, we finally announced our conference, Rebels of Disclosure, May 13th through the 16th in Grafton, Illinois next year. Tickets are finally on sale. The website is live. You can buy your ticket, and we are offering early bird tickets this year. So with the early bird 4-day pass, it includes a free t-shirt, and all 4-day passes include a live stream link this year. They did in the past, but we didn't advertise it as that. So if you get I think the early bird, we're going to end it on midnight on Black Friday. So if you take advantage of that sale now, you get a free t-shirt with your ticket. There is a live stream early bird sale as well. The live stream passes, I think, are $10 cheaper now until Black Friday. So take advantage of that. And I do recommend booking your room. The venue is already over half booked and tickets just went on sale. People have been pulling the trigger on that, and the people who have been the last 2 years know the venue fills up quick. So if you do want to stay on site, I recommend booking your room ASAP. And we can talk all day about the conference, but we are super excited about it, and we can't wait to see all of you guys there. And that link is below, rebelsofdisclosure.com. Tonight we are joined by Kristin Bredimus. She is a spiritual consultant / medium, and among many other things. And Aaron and I just recently did a Zoom call with her the other night, and it was really interesting because she communicates with the other side. And I haven't seen one yet, but the other night, your room was filled with orbs. There was orb traffic, like you were sitting in the middle of a vortex or something. And it was pretty wild. And you were just like, oh yeah, no big deal.
You're like, oh yeah, that's normal.
It was pretty awesome. But we had an amazing conversation, and I'm excited to get into a lot of what we discussed. And first of all, welcome to the show. And how are you doing?
Great. Thanks so much for having me on. And I love the title of next year's conference. It's perfect.
Yeah, it is a fun title.
That was all Tyler. That was Tyler.
It's really good.
That hit me while I was driving. I was just like, I was thinking something like resistance, rebels, I don't know, but it all came together, and it works, and we're excited about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess just for the audience who doesn't know who you are, would you mind introducing yourself and just giving us a brief background of how you even found yourself in the midst of communicating with the other side? And I do remember you mentioned you grew up in a haunted house, which kind of kicked things off for you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So I feel like a lot of people come to this space in terms of curiosity about paranormal or metaphysics because of their own experiences. And a lot of times it begins with a really good ghost story, or it can also begin with losing a loved one. So my kind of origin story was a childhood of some interesting experiences that culminated when we moved into a haunted house in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And one of the things that had happened as soon as we went into the house, like the moment within minutes, there was an experience. And the encounter was I put my first box into my would-be bedroom. And when I came back with the second one, it was levitating. And that began probably about a year and a half journey of me telling myself that something was my imagination. So it didn't matter what was physically manifesting in front of me. I would always come up with a logical reason about why it wasn't the thing that I was experiencing. And then it all kind of culminated with an experience. I actually had a friend who had been involved in a car accident, and the car accident claimed the life of his father, and it also seriously injured him, his mom, and his girlfriend at the time. And they were all in the hospital for a long period of time, but when they came out, he came and stayed at my house. And what I later learned from a medium who became a mentor was that his vibrational frequency of grief, of the trauma that he had experienced, had activated the house. And what happened a short amount of time afterwards was I was alone. It was around 3 a.m. and I heard my front door open and then footsteps up to the second floor where I was. And I didn't have any time to react. So I quickly just became still. And the energy felt initially like it was human because I could hear the footsteps. But as soon as it crossed the threshold of my room, my bed was shaking. There were loud kind of clashing sounds and bright lights. And that began a period of time, a short period of time, where there was a tremendous amount of paranormal activity. I eventually contacted a medium who came to the house, and as soon as she knocked on the door and I opened the door, it began to pour down rain, and there was like a clash of lightning. And I kind of nervously joked about what a coincidence. And she explained that her spirit team was indigenous to the land and that they would kind of come in and consolidate the energy when she was going into a space. So that whole experience, I mean, I'd be happy to give you like all of the details, but to kind of keep it brief, it was a moment where suddenly I was hearing spirit, seeing spirit, feeling spirit. There was an energy that ran through my body and knocked my breath out of my body. And it was my first experience where we essentially crossed over, because what the medium's belief is that if there's a haunted house, it could be a few different things, but if there is some type of sentience in the house, then this is an energy that wasn't able to cross over for whatever reason. And that essentially it's the humane thing to do to assist the energy in crossing into a different dimension or space.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
no, go on.
So I've heard that. I mean, I do believe that, a spirit might reside in a house, but I do think they also follow people around as well. And it's the individual's attachment. So I think, we're dealing with two different things, but in this case, it was specific to the house and no one inside, right?
Yeah. So what ended up happening, there was a little bit of history of all of the spirits that were in the space. So each one had like a backstory. So for instance, Newburyport is a port city, and there was a sea captain who had died at sea and had left a family that was approximately in the space, because that location had been multiple homes over the years. And so he didn't transition because he was leaving a loved one. So there was another, there was a young boy who had been a slave, and he followed like the Underground Railroad path. And and the area had been a barn, and that was one of the last spaces that he hid before he was killed. So each energy that was experienced had a connection to what the location was.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time, after she cleared it, I thought, okay, thank goodness that experience is over, because that was really terrifying. And what ended up happening was more spirits started coming into the house. And at that point, when I called her kind of panicking about what was happening, she said, I think that they're actually being drawn to you, and that you may have some psychic abilities. So at that point, she came over, and once again, she taught me how to clear the space. And we did some different testings where psychometry, and she would kind of give me objects to hold, and I would tell what the story was or where the origin was. But the whole experience as, you know, a late teen young girl was really terrifying to me. And it set off a series of encounters where whenever I was kind of out in the world, I was kind of constantly inundated by spirit, and they were becoming more vibrant to me, that I could walk down the street and I could see them with my objective clairvoyance. So objective clairvoyance is when you're seeing it right in front of you, versus subjective when it's in the mind's eye.
Mm.
And I eventually shut everything down because I was too scared.
Yeah, and it leads into my next question. So when you shut everything down like that, did you have any physical adverse effects? Like, how did it affect your life? Because I know when you suppress like your mission, it shows up in life. Things can become uncomfortable until you address it.
Yeah. Had I known that.
Right.
So,
Right.
so essentially, I was really terrified. So I would do these exercises to kind of draw it in my aura and really suppress my light body. And it wasn't until decades later, when I had a health crisis and I had like a mystery illness. I went the conventional medical route, and there were lots of scary words that were suggested, but ultimately we couldn't get to the bottom of it. And then eventually I started going the holistic medicine route, and it was basically determined that symptomatically it was chronic Lyme disease. And the illness had gotten so bad that I was bedridden, and I even had a couple of occasions when I couldn't understand language. So at this point, I am I'm in my 40s, so I'm 53 right now. And so I had like many decades, having some experience as a child, big accumulation when I was in my teens, and a few peppered experiences, but really trying to suppress it because I was terrified. And then when life got so overwhelming with illness, I had to figure out something that was naturally part of who I was. And for whatever reason, the conclusion I came to was, well, I had these paranormal experiences when I was young, and not everybody has that. So maybe that's naturally a part of who I am. And that set me on a journey, which initially began it began with saying yes to every single thing that was suggested to me, which brought healers into my path, mentors into my path. It also brought me an experience going to a spiritualist church, where I saw that the medium would go up and do a platform demonstration in broad daylight. It wasn't in the middle of the night. It wasn't terrifying. And I at that point, I thought, there has to be a mechanism to turn it on and to turn it off. And if I can turn it on and turn it off, that feels much safer to me. Like I have some agency over the experience, and I don't have to be terrified.
Mm-hmm.
So that coincided with an opportunity to move and live in London. And in London, with their society, it's just much more open to metaphysics and paranormal. And there are colleges and institutions where you can go and learn both like healing modalities and then a lot of esoteric subjects. So when I was there, I had the opportunity to study at the College of Psychic Studies and the School of Intuition and Healing. So the college was, it was originally started in Victorian England by a group of scientists and journalists and different esteemed professionals who wanted to disprove phenomenon. And what they ended up doing was proving phenomenon. Mm-hmm. So a big part of what they do is it's proof that consciousness exists beyond the physical embodiment. And so the college is very much, it's an institution that in a lot of ways is very conservative because they want to maintain the integrity of work that is very controversial depending on like what the belief system is.
Right.
So
yeah,
I had the opportunity, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your sentence. Yeah.
Just I had the opportunity to go and experience a lot of different subject matters. And this college is actually where J.K. Rowling did a lot of her research for Harry Potter.
I was that's the first thing I thought of when you said they practice it more openly over there in London, and because I was like, yeah, Harry Potter, like it just rang a bell. But so it's really important to be able to control your gift, and this is something that we've talked about in the past, but maybe we can, or you can expand on how you learn to do that, because I do know people in my own life who are learning that they have these abilities, discovering these abilities, and it becomes scary. And when you can't turn it off, they do what you did. You shut it off, and then you start getting sick and things happen, and you have to learn how to control that. I mean, we're all here for a reason. We're all here to help each other, and we all have gifts. And if you can learn how to harness that in a healthy manner, then that's crucial.
Yeah, exactly. And that was exactly what my own personal mission was in the beginning, was to figure out how things work. And that's a big part of how I approach things to this day. So one of the things that I initially discovered was the mechanism for how we're able to turn it on and turn it off. And that is essentially through meditation and starting to learn about the light body system or the chakra system. So we can activate or expand our aura and this column of light and frequency. And then when we ground ourselves, so when we're utilizing our intention, which focuses our cognitive energy, when we ground into the body and we ground to the earth plane, we are able to expand and reach higher frequencies and higher dimensions. And so a lot of it is it's like a psychic workout that you're going in and meditating, and you begin by first just learning that this is the root chakra and this is the sacral chakra. And then what happens over time, even if you think that you're not clairvoyant, you start to have a mental picture of what this looks like. So it's through repetition. And one of the things that people don't realize is that every single person has this ability. Mm-hmm. It's a natural part of who all of us are. And this is one of the things that I personally am really passionate about, because I feel like our society has been so disempowered and enslaved because we don't even know who we are, right, or what we're capable of.
Bingo.
So we switch it on by grounding, opening our chakras, expanding our aura, and then we utilize our consciousness like a GPS. So we want to pull up earth energy and pull down cosmic energy, and then we create a battery, and then we're able to tap in to different frequencies.
Yeah, that's helpful. So you began by communicating with deceased loved ones, like this, just a spirit realm ghost, what we would consider
Yeah.
ghost. And then that, did that lead to anything else, like the higher dimensional beings, ETs? Have you encountered any of that?
Yes, all of the above. So initially I was just in the space of mediumship because that's what my experience had been. And through mediumship, I learned that we had spirit guides. And if we learn to connect with our spirit guide, especially our gatekeeper or doorkeeper, then that would help facilitate and organize our communication with different deceased loved ones. But what is really interesting is when I came to the College of Psychic Studies, I enrolled in a class on guides and guardians, thinking that great, I'm going to meet my spirit team, and then I'm off to the races. And what it actually was communicating with the angelic realm. And initially, I was a little bit frustrated because I didn't necessarily believe in angels. And I also at the time, I was conflicted about anything that had a religious connotation. But what happened was our very first opportunity to meditate, I immediately saw an angelic energy. And then what flashed in my mind was two near-death experiences that I had. And those near-death experiences, there was no reason why I wasn't not only, no reason why I, one, survived it, but also wasn't harmed. And I saw this picture of my guardian angel kind of taking me from one moment over to the next quickly. And then I had this moment of, oh my God, angels are real. And that became a journey of, oh my God, that is real. Oh my God, that is real.
Right.
So one of the things that I think is interesting about my personal experience is in the beginning, so many things were coming so quickly about I guess like the truth about reality and multidimensional reality, that I had these moments of thinking, what is going on? Because I feel like so many things are so extreme that, I believed in this, and now I have this whole reservoir of experience. And I really believed that it was like boot camp to prepare me for not so much like the decade of work I've now done, but really the last 4 years. Because what I understand is initially my mission was to meet the world's empaths and help unlock their superhuman powers, because being an empath is usually such a really trying human experience, and so many people are exhausted or overwhelmed by it. But when they realize you can turn it on, you can turn it off, they get to unlock their human potential. But as time has gone on, it's been much more of a like an epic spiritual calling to try to figure out what is going on. What is going on in the matrix? How did we get here? How can we get out of here? What are the psyopses? So to answer your earlier question, I have literally been in contact with lower dimensional beings, with demonic energies. I've been in communication with angels, ascended masters, star beings. It has been like the array of experiences which have left me realizing everything is real. Every single thing is real.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I love it. All right, we can end it on that note.
Yeah.
You said it all.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
So I agree with you, and I think it's incredible that you started understanding, that you started even communicating with the lower realms and the higher realms, because that's the only way that you're gonna gain a perspective on what's actually going on, what's taking place, the spiritual war that we hear about, and through your experiences, what is your opinion? What are you seeing right now? What is happening?
So it is a spiritual war, that everything that is happening comes down to light versus dark, or everything is about the dissolving of polarities. I would say that, like, one of the things that I have learned is, first of all, I'm sure that with your subject matter journey to truth, you've come to conclude that truth can be non-binary, because there are many truths depending on what reality or dimension you're existing in.
Right.
And that as you expand, and that expansion is actually light. So enlightenment is actual light. As you are, either knowingly or unknowingly, if your light body is activated, you are holding more light in your body, which raises your frequency. And the reason why I'm kind of starting with that is because part of it is understanding that there can be a truth in one moment that doesn't exist in the next. And that's for several reasons, which includes time lapse, or timelines collapsing, or timeline jumping. So part of what kind of leading up to this culmination, which I believe that this year that we're in right now is, it is a year outside of time and space that is right before the main event. And the main event begins as we move into 2024. And we have a finite amount of time to, conventional time, to change the trajectory of where human consciousness, as it's embroiled in the matrix, where it's headed towards. But I'll skip to the end of the story. The light's already won, and I can tell you why that is. But it really begins with my personal, like, quantum purpose propelled the December 31st of 2019, when I was doing my spiritual practices, because I wanted to create like a really clear canvas as we were going into a new year. And as I was in a
Really quick, and you can continue.
Yeah.
When did COVID officially hit? What month was that?
So
March of 2020.
March of
Yeah.
20.
When
So
it was
this was
announced.
pre-COVID 20. Okay.
Yeah. So it's pre it being in mass media. So essentially, I'm doing this meditation, and in this meditation, it was really about healing. And I was given awarenesses about healing on a whole new level. And it was essentially how everything creates everything. And it was just this awareness of, like, everything that you consume, whether it's content, whether it's food or drink, whether it's environmental, it all comes into the body, and then that's what creates any disease within the body. So I was having this moment of all of these epiphanies, where I was shown different moments in my life and clearing the energy. And then it was like, this program is now being interrupted. And I went into this stream where I was essentially watching a movie. And in this movie, it was a combination of images, feelings, words. And I was essentially, what was expressed to me was that we were on the precipice of a global pandemic, and that there was a virus that was deadly, and that I was kind of shown like chaos and control across the globe. And as I was watching it, I was kind of shown time having a linear visual representation. And what I was told is that it was going to be immensely challenging one way or the other. And then there was like the sliding scale where it was showing like what is the really hard, difficult, challenging moments, or what is the apocalypse. And it kind of slid, and then it just slid just beyond the apocalypse. And as this image or vision was ending, I heard, "Do not take the vaccine." And I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Right.
And
Yeah, good advice.
I and at the time I was like, what was that? Because my whole ethos as a spiritual consultant is to bring like light and positivity and empowerment. So my messages are usually very uplifting, and I hadn't had a message like that before. And I harbored that message in secret through January. But at the time, I happened to, when I went back to school to do my metaphysical studies, I had a online job where I was monitoring health communities, both patients and doctors. And one of my communities was infectious disease with a global doctor group. And so in this little window of my, part-time job, I started hearing doctors talking about the coronavirus. And that's when I realized that like what happened to me was real, that this is really coming. So I was really hesitant because I didn't want to incite any fear in anyone. So I was trying to kind of leave breadcrumbs for my community via my newsletters. And I was trying to give some messages because we started to have news about what was going on in China. So it was kind of like trying to tap on the shoulder and point to the news. And then I started just really boosting the immune system with vitamins and minerals for my family. So that became like then the point of trying to figure out what is really happening, because within that, it didn't feel to me that this was natural or organic. And one of the things that I've learned through my own psychic development, and one of the reasons why I was able to advance a little bit faster than some of my classmates, was because I asked questions. So when you ask a question, sometimes you have to ask 100 questions to get the answer, but the information flows. So I would go down these rabbit holes of trying to figure out what was happening. And I was given a few different possibilities, which I actually think are either parallel timelines, or because it was almost as if it wasn't fully formulated what exactly it was. But it was both related to, like, the explanations always fell in the categories of bioweapons and also technological advancements in terms of like the frequencies of the non-natural EMFs.
Right.
So, and then, yeah, sorry.
Well, go ahead. I mean, I want to hear the whole thing, and I have plenty of questions, but
Like 5G, for example, would that?
Yeah, exactly. That it was creating these like biostorms in the body and impacting immune systems. And so it was kind of like this perfect storm that was happening. But if you both remember, there was also a lot of things that were happening that year. So although our news was all kind of one track, there were also fires in Australia.
oh yeah.
And
I remember that.
and that became like, that was really interesting to me because of my psychic development. One of the things that we did when we did an exercise for astral projection was to astrally project to Ayers Rock, which is the solar plexus, or I believe like some of the chakras of the earth are migrating to different locations depending on what dimension aspects are. But at the time, that was the solar plexus. And in my experience, all of my classmates like did a nice little trek and went to the plateau and meditated. And I went in to a stargate essentially. and I was brought in by a Aboriginal man who gave me an entryway, and I was seeing these different, I mean, I can only describe them as stargates because they were entry points to different planetary systems. So when the fire started happening, I thought, what's going on here? Because is it transmutation? Is it that we are in this like spiritual crisis on a global level? And so is the earth naturally transmuting, because the solar plexus is where we absorb all of the lower dense energies. So is that happening, or is there something else happening?
So a bunch of questions. First of all, I've been seeing the orbs, you know, they're going crazy.
Yeah. Lots of orbs again.
So the rock in Australia, that's not Uluru, is it? Like
It is.
okay, Uluru.
Yeah.
So what did
Uluru
you
or Ayers Rock.
Ayers
There's
Rock, that's what
two
you
different
called it.
names. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I mean, there's tons of like star history, star being history there, ET
Mhm.
history
yeah.
there. The Aboriginals is a very sacred place, and a lot of people connect with it. So that doesn't surprise me, but it's also beautiful that you were able to see like what is actually why it's so sacred. It's like a entry, it's a gateway, it's a stargate.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, so there's a lot that you said that I forgot like half of my questions already, but
You're
so
talking about the fires
yeah,
being,
yeah.
were they the earth naturally transmuting the energies, or was it something else? Were they like maybe man-made?
Was it more about like the vision of the pandemic?
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'd love to hear more about the experience of the stargates and the planetary systems. Like, were there any specific planetary systems or specific groups of ETs or beings that you saw, or was it just kind of like a general thing?
It was a general, because again, this was the very first time I did anything like this. And I was kind of the mindset of like, I have messed up the assignment, because all of us, we were all in different locations around London, and we were astral projecting to Australia. And when I sat in class and everyone shared their experience, I was like, I totally did this wrong. So, and when I shared with my teacher, she just smiled at me and nodded her head. So I did have different experience. I mean, I've had one specific experience with, I'm not sure exactly what the species is. Well, actually, I guess I shouldn't say I've had one. I've had one contact that I was aware of in London, where a being that was a drone, essentially, had a huge head, very small being, big eyes, had made contact with me earlier in the day when I was doing some inner child work as part of my spiritual counseling program. And I had a really bizarre experience where you're communicating with your unconscious mind, and the mechanism of doing it is kind of asking a question, writing it down with your dominant hand, and then allowing the answer to come in intuitively and writing it with your opposite hand. And in doing that, I had 3 different perfect penmanship with 3 different energies. And again, like, I wasn't doing the assignment correctly, because I was supposed to be connecting to my inner child. And it started out, then I went to a different place. And my teacher at the time, when I went and said, what just happened? He said, well, there was an extraterrestrial that came into your field as you were doing this. Don't worry, I'll take care of it.
Wow.
And again, like, I didn't have experience. So this is very much of the, I'm open to it, but until I experience, I don't know about it.
Right.
So those were all in the early days of that. But one of the things that I since have had a lot of experiences is really identifying when somebody is a star seed or a star being. Not to the level of some of the people that I know that you all have communicated with, but it's because it's more from an intuitive space, and particularly Palladians and Octurians are the star seeds or star beings that I've had the most contact with.
Right. So whenever you
Nice.
were encountering or communicating with the lower dimensional demonic entities, did you get an idea of their game and what they're here actually doing, and did they spill the beans to you, or did you see kind of like behind the scenes on what they're actually doing? I know they're working through a lot of these politicians and a lot of the people, the elites and stuff.
So again, the way that I'll explain it is I feel like I was given like boot camp. So I have like snippets of a lot of things. So one of the things that I do is remote views. And I would remote view when I lived in London to my home. And my mother was living there at the time. And what I saw was an entity that was feeding her nightmares. And then was the fear that was created within her, the entity was sucking it off of her as food. So, and I have other experiences, but there is a species of dark force entities that their whole existence is to propagate fear, and fear is what keeps them alive.
Right.
And
That's
they're
very
like black on black. Like if you went into a room and your eyes adjusted, you might see them as like literally a black on black in the
I've seen
corner
them.
of a room.
I've
Yeah.
seen them. Actually, I don't know if you know much about my story, but I've been under attack since my mother passed away in 2011, and it got intense. And I learned I got control of it until recently. Every once in a while you let your guard down, something comes in, something attaches, something happens, and they went away. They stopped forever. I mean, not forever. It seemed like forever for me, but they stopped for months, I
Yeah.
guess. And I was like, wow, I'm sleeping. I couldn't believe like the attack stopped. It was incredible until I realized why they stopped. It's because they had a hold of me and they didn't need to attack me anymore. And I was like operating in this lower
I'm
frequency.
sorry.
I was
Yeah.
operating in this lower frequency. Even my dad noticed, like other people kind of who knew me could feel it, but it's hard. Once you're in it, you're almost blind to it. Until I went to Colorado and I had this session with this amazing healer, which was incredible. That's a whole story in itself. But the night before, that morning, as I was waking up before I was going to see her for the session, was one of the worst attacks I've had my entire life. And in the dream, the experience it gave me was I was walking through this door and it was like hiding behind the door, and it like pounced on me, and like in the most demonic voice ever, it said, "Not this." I said, "Not this time, you dirty motherfucker." And it jumped on me and started like trying to like attacking me. And I woke up in bed and with this entity on top of me, and I couldn't get out of it this time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was horrifying. And I know that
Yeah.
was no coincidence that I was getting ready, and that entity has been since removed in that session. And it was beautiful, and I've been fine since. But it knew that its time was over. And but when you
Yeah.
said you saw that feeding off of your
Mm-hmm.
mother, like
Mm-hmm.
I know that's been me for years. But anyway, um,
Yeah.
I understand it. Yeah.
And also too, so that experience that you're talking about, as you know, are spirit attachments, and that became, I mean, the especially when I lived in London, because I feel like London is the epicenter of the world. So the veil is very, very thin in London in terms of you can walk down the street and you can basically like look right through and see beyond their human disguise what these beings are, particularly in London.
Wow.
Um, which was, I mean, it was pretty amazing and also terrifying. And even like having people would come for readings. And I remember this one star being came into the reading and was just first, it just seemed like it's just a woman who's coming in to ask for a reading. And then all of a sudden, one of her eyes turns all the way black. And whenever that happens, when someone's eyes turn black, then I know that I'm about to be psychically attacked, because it's like the entity, the possession wants to challenge you. And it was different with her though, because she was conscious of what was happening. Because a lot of times the person has they know something is happening and their anxiety is through the roof. They're terrified, and they've oftentimes experienced an extreme trauma that then, because that's another thing about attachments, which a lot of people don't understand. You can't have an attachment unless you've left your body for some reason. And that's
trauma.
Usually trauma related.
From the
So it could be
trauma.
physical, medical, psychological, etc.
Wow.
But the attachments, that's another part of the whole agenda, because so I think that a lot of times what happens is the individual that comes here for a big spiritual purpose. And, pro tip for everyone who's still breathing, that we're all here for this moment. We all have volunteered to be a part of this moment, which is the most epic moment in the history of the planet, which is exciting. So what oftentimes happens is these lower demonic energies come for people that have tremendous light and maybe haven't awakened to their purpose, but the dark is trying to extinguish the light before the light even has the opportunity to shine.
Right.
So it always correlates with that.
Yeah, it's like they wait for you to break programming, and as soon as they see a glitch in the matrix, they're like, it sends off a red flag, and then they send in reinforcements to keep you suppressed. I feel like, and it's really interesting, and everything you're saying resonates just because I've experienced it. But
and real quick,
yeah.
I want to highlight the point that you made about fear, and that they feed off of that, because that is it right there. Exactly. And what I realize, and that's what I realize is like this whole false matrix that we're in runs off, like these entities are behind it, and they're making sure it keeps generating not just fear, but like all the low vibrational emotions. So fear, sadness, anger, guilt, shame, all of it. But fear, you could just kind of say fear encompasses all of that in a way. So they need to keep us generating those low vibrations. So, well, for one, keep us at a low vibration, and then keep us generating those emotions. Emotions are just energy in motion, which they feed off of that energy. So it's like a big system they've created of energy creation that we're doing unconsciously, not realizing we're feeding these other entities. Like we're unconsciously the cogs in the machine that they're like, we're the ones creating it. That's the craziest part of it. But they've just manipulated us into creating it, and then keep creating it and keep sustaining it. But on an individual level, like you said, these entities can come and like they try to scare you because they know you're going to be afraid, and then you're going to give off all this, we call it loosh energy. Some people call it loosh, fear energy, and then it feeds off of that. So it's getting like a meal basically, and that's sustaining that being, because those beings are basically cut off from source. So they have to parasite. They don't have that source energy that's sustaining them like we do.
Right.
So they have to parasite off of us. So they have to scare us and get us to generate their food source essentially. So Tyler, like you said, like they realize like, oh crap, he's waking up. We got to lock him back down, because it's almost like they view you as this like food source they can't lose. But once you raise up above a frequency that they can attach to, it's game over for them. They can't get you anymore. You're out of their reach. So that's it.
And it's incredible, like the stuff that I learned in that session that I had that day about like generationally, like something that I was experiencing that actually was passed on from my mother when she passed away, and just a number of different things that it was like, you think you understand things, and then like there's this whole next level just waiting, and it was like a new download, and I'm still processing a lot of it, and I'm sure there's more above that, but we can only one step at a time, so it's not like overload and you fry your system, because that can happen too if you're not ready for all that information. So
right.
And going back to what you said about You know, you saw like the whole bioweapon, like it was very much of like a warlike scenario on us, and like
Mm-hmm.
building the immune system. What I noticed last year, I love being in the sun. Like I'm always, you know, shirt off, outside, sun, everything. But last year when I went out in the sun for the first time after winter, I started getting a rash like from the sun, and it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, why? Like I couldn't be out in the sun. And I'm like, something I knew innately it wasn't anything with me. I just know it was something either with the air, the chemtrails, the
Mm-hmm.
sun. I don't know what was going on, but it's not the same. And the same thing happened to me this year. Like I became
Mm-hmm.
really sensitive to the sun all of a sudden. And I've never been like that. And I feel that there's something, suspicious about that.
Well, there's a few things going on with that. So one of the things that, as you go down the rabbit hole, wherever the rabbit hole is, because when I'm asking the questions, why? And if it's a spiritual war, I want to know more about that and why now and why this moment and why has it been prophesied? So a lot of it comes down to astrology and planetary alignment. And, part of what is happening is that we have entered, and I'm not an astrologer, but my fundamental understanding of what has happened and also what has been communicated with me, because I think like when you awaken, it's kind of one existential crisis after another, because you have to come to terms with things that are really hard to come to terms with, because I think that, you know, humans are basically really good, gentle, kind people. So it's really hard to believe that these things exist and that these things are true and that there is a darkness that is as dark as what we unfortunately know to be true.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it is that we are in the natural, it's the natural disaster cycle of the earth. So roughly like right around 27,000 years, the earth always goes through these cycles, and the cycle is brought on by the galactic alignment. So the galactic central sun within the Milky Way, and then the sun within the Pleiades and Earth sun, it becomes this this time when there is tremendous amount of gamma rays coming to the planet. So part of what you are experiencing is the intensity of light, because that is our enlightenment. And because we've been told, stay away from the sun, you're going to get cancer, put this on your skin, put sunglasses on, all of these things. We have not cultivated a relationship with this energy source that is responsible for all life. So that is a piece of it. And that was something that I started to notice years ago, because I had studied photography. So I always take a lot of photographs. And I was always seeing that when I was photographing, I was catching rainbows, but there wasn't any water to go with that combination. And I realized like, oh, this is all coming from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a piece of it, but that is the mechanism. The sun is the mechanism for mass enlightenment. And that is one of the reasons why there's so much going on with weather modification to try to block out the sun. And we're told that it's a climate crisis, and it's not to say that we haven't abused the earth, because we've lost a conscious connection with the earth, but additionally it's the natural cycle of the earth.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And we have lost
Right.
the conscious connection. But I guess right now, what that wave of light would be doing is coming in and bringing that conscious connection back, or it's bringing conscious thoughts back into people, maybe, and helping them realize, reactivate, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the part when I said, like, the good news is, even though it's a spiritual war of light versus darkness, the good news is that the light has won. The reason why I'm saying that is because there is an alignment that is happening. that it's an alignment within the cosmos. It's bigger than any one thing on earth and any, organization or cabal. What is also happening is that the earth is a sentient being, and the earth is ascending, literally. Geobiologists, which is a branch of science that started in 2017, they have tracked that how the earth is evolving, how the frequency of the earth is literally ascending, and it ascends at every cross quarter, so every solstice or equinox, and it multiplies. So since 2017, it keeps multiplying, and the calculation is that by December, winter solstice of 2024, the earth will have completed her ascension process. So physics teaches us that like attracts like. So if, like our mother, if our planet is in an ascended frequency, then every sentient being will ascend, even though we're all on different frequencies and different scales of our ascension.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a great picture to paint for, there's always people saying the light has already won, but it just has to play out physically. But you just painted a great picture to help us understand that. So you mentioned earlier that 2023, you believe exists outside of time and space. And you mentioned something about timelines collapsing as well. And when you had that 2019 vision, you saw like maybe parallel timelines and stuff, but they weren't like the permanent timelines. So maybe some of those were collapsing. I know this is a loaded question, but I'll let you expand on that.
No, I can explain. So in that original vision, when it was going, it was showing me that 2020 was going to be really hard, but that like the hard continued, and it actually got harder with each year. And one of the things that I, in addition to that, as I was trying to figure out what's going on, how is it going on, why is this happening, I was also constantly receiving messages. So I created this group of people in 2020 called Evolutionary Light Warriors. And so initially we were doing different metaphysic teachings, because I really felt like it was important to get some mastery over our intuition and start to make sense of what was happening. And I was kind of given different clues. So it was like one clue was Norse mythology. And really the reason why there's that template is because within that belief system, there is no time. It's not linear. And then, so it was putting like together all of these clues. And each year I've been given a different message. So 2022 was really about shadow work. And it was important to excavate as much of the shadow, because the more that you bring to the surface, the more light you can hold. As we started to approach 2023, because now it's this time that as we go into each year, I receive a message with my instructions, because that's one of the things that I always say, like, this isn't me. I just get my instructions, and I've cultivated my discernment, which is really important. And we can go into that if you want to, but I follow my instructions. So whatever I'm being told, and then I was told that 2023 exists outside of time and space. And this is a year of self-mastery. So everybody needing to choose their adventure, and to be really aware that everything creates everything. So having much more mastery over your thoughts, over your emotions, over your energy, and much more accountability for your energy, because we are all creator gods, and we are unconsciously creating the chaos. So with that, it was definitely like batten down the hatches. So ceased to receive negative imprinting from mass media. So, and that was a big part of what I was also witnessing, was all of the all of the synchronized messaging, no matter where you were in the globe, there were sound bites that were the same that were being repeated. And since I've lived in a few different countries, I noticed like this is a colloquialism for England, but it's not part of what, like even jabs and arms as an example. Like that wasn't an American phrase that now is completely an American phrase.
Right.
So basically this year, outside of time and space, and everybody is invited to gain more accountability and responsibility for themselves. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of people that are in a different dimension than we are, even though we can see each other and communicate with each other, but we can't really access each other.
I agree. I agree 100%. I've been saying that ever since 2019, ever since this pandemic started, it's become so clear and obvious to me that you can be standing next to someone on the sidewalk and be existing in a completely different, I guess you could say, dimension. I was going to say program. Like you can see their programming, you can see this person's programming, you can see it's like you're not even in the same world, you know?
And you try to talk to them about this type of stuff, and it's like you're talking to a brick wall. And it's just like, there's like this huge disconnect of like what all they're interested in and all you're interested in, or all you want to talk about and all they can like comprehend or want to talk about. And
it's all frequency. Like, they're not frequencies.
You're on two completely different frequencies. And do you think that goes along with, I don't know if you're a fan of Dolores Cannon at all, or if you know much about her, but she would talk about the kind of, she talked about in terms of an Earth split, where like there's two different major timelines, where one, the Earth stays in 3D and it's more of a negative kind of thing, and then one's like the 5D ascension timeline, and that there's a period of time where we're all coexisting, even though we're on those two different dimensions, but like you said, we're all still seeing each other and interacting in a way. But then as it gets farther and farther apart, the less and less you're gonna even perceive each other until the split like fully happens. And there's a lot of, there's people that agree with that and disagree and blah, blah, blah. But like, I think we can all agree that there is an ascension happening. There is the Earth is ascending, and we're on the Earth. So we're either going to go with it or we're not, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I conceptualize it as on the precipice of the golden age. So the golden age is somewhere between 2030 and 2032, which is also kind of correlates with Agenda 21. So like some of these timelines are these timelines of control, and this year exists outside of time and space, but it's seeding what timeline we enter in 2024. So I guess like I had been calling the timelines the like living organic and then the matrix or the control. But there's a third timeline which is emerging, which I think is really interesting because it's like a timeline that is beyond linear human consciousness or comprehension. And that timeline started to appear really just in the month of September. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll connect to the collective consciousness, because I know from the work that I do that there's a lot of governments that know about consciousness and are seeding consciousness with fear, because fear is control. And if I go in and I transmute the energy in the collective, then it's a way to support the collective. So as I was doing that, I started to see that beyond my imagery of the collective, there was this golden consciousness. And I started to see that over time, it was almost like an eclipse. And the golden consciousness literally overlaid with the consciousness that is the controlled consciousness at the solar eclipse that just passed. So a lot of times this time of year is very, very, very heavy because the veils are really thin, and the dark energies have more influence, especially because in so many different, especially in America, it's Halloween. So we want to be scared. We want to go into all of the horror stories. And that then starts to permeate consciousness. I also think it's really interesting that The Exorcist, True Believer, is out now. And I knew nothing about the movie, but I was in the movies and the trailer came on, and it was like literally a demonic incantation. And I was like with my child, and it was immediately like bringing in angelic energies to clear the theater and try to, safeguard the audience from that.
Yeah. Somebody said that I saw online on Facebook or something. Somebody said, if you go see The Exorcist, you'll need an exorcism afterwards. And they
Yeah.
weren't joking. And I saw part of the preview and I literally turned it off. I turned my head. It was so disgusting. Like I was like, wow. Like and I know how they manipulate. It's all black magic and the black mirror technology and the frequencies, the ELFs, the extremely low hypnotic frequencies that come through the movie. They bypass the conscious mind into the subconscious mind. They program you, open portals in your home. I mean, there are so many things about scary movies that I just don't even touch them. But even that one in particular, and then the theaters are rerunning the original. Like there's an agenda there. It's not just like, oh, hey, let's just have some fun scaring people. Like it's something to take very seriously, in my opinion.
Oh, it absolutely is. Because again, this year exists outside of time and space. And so anyone that understands that, or any consciousness that understands it, it's an opportunity to manipulate as many people as possible. Because if we are not choosing, the choice will be made for us. And so for the people that, for whatever reason, whether it's your mission, whether it's happenstance, whatever it is, anyone that is on any level of awakening, it is time for action. It is not time merely to have conversations or research, which is really important, but it's also time to consciously create. Because this moment then seeds what happens next. And again, that like, are we going to do it the really hard way, or are we going to do the destructive way? So even though the light has already won, that like victory could be decades, and it could be after much more human suffering. So part of it is bringing consciousness back to thought. Meaning, like, so many people, they don't realize that all day long they are thinking negatively, they are believing negatively. So when we start to really be accountable for our thoughts, our energy, when we start to realize that fear is an illusion. So yes, there are life or death moments, and those are real, but most people are not constantly in a life or death moment. And then otherwise, that fear is about the past, or it's about the future. So the present does not contain fear. And if we understand that it's an illusion, we can start to create the space within us that we can hold our own field. We're not that pendulum that's going faster and faster to more extremes.
Yeah.
So with that like golden consciousness, a third timeline is coming in. So the way that I see it, it's almost like these two timelines that are in parallel, and now there's a third one that's kind of flowing forward to meet us.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it's beautiful. I think, man, I lost my train of thought. What I was just going to ask you prior to that. So this third timeline coming in, like I like what you said about like the war, the spiritual war is already won, right? But it could be however long before that actually manifests. So like taking the action right now and consciously making decisions, and it all comes down to choice too. Like Like every single choice you make all day long, like steers
Mhm.
you like that. That's how you navigate these times right now. And it could be
Right.
something as simple as whatever you decide to eat or decide to watch. But if you keep making that same choice, the wrong choice, maybe it's not wrong, but maybe it's the lower frequency choice. If you keep making that same choice every day, you're not really doing yourself any favors. So you have to consciously break that programming and break those habits, because it does
Yeah.
become habit, everything that we do. So I do agree with you that like now's the time to take action. And I actually needed to hear that myself, because the dark thoughts, they can consume us sometimes. And I really feel like I needed to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, where you
You're
put your energy is what you're going to create more of and what's going to show up more for you. So if you're always focusing on how bad everything is and how negative and all the darkness and all, if that's all you're ever focusing on, or mostly all you're ever focusing, then you're feeding into that actually, and that's what they want. So what I noticed is that they don't care whether you are super against all the darkness and everything going on, or super for all the agendas. You're still feeding into it either way, because all your attention is going
Yeah.
on those negative, dark control things, fear-based things. So you're
Yeah.
feeding into it, whether you're super against it and you think you might be raising awareness, but if you're feeding fear into coming from a place of fear and anger and hatred and all that, well, you're actually you're feeding into it, and everyone who is following you, you're also feeding that into them, and that's just perpetuating more of the same, because that's how it works.
Yeah.
So you need to get back into yourself and cultivate love and joy and all the good things that you actually like, like focus on what you actually want to create. And then doesn't mean don't be aware of those things. We need to be aware of it. We need to acknowledge what is, and we need to be aware of it. Absolutely. Because you can't spiritually bypass either. That's the other end of the spectrum that people, I can't even look at it. No, it's not my reality. I don't want to talk about that. Look at it. No, because now you're in resistance to it. And
Mhm.
that's not how it works either. And that means there's something in you that needs to be healed.
Yeah,
But at the same time, we need to not be feeding it. And I see a lot of people that are feeding it and they don't even realize it. They think they're fighting it or calling it out, and
bingo.
they are in a way, but they're actually feeding it.
That's what I was going to
So,
say. Like, it's actually not everyone's fault. Like the people that are subconsciously feeding it, like it's not their fault, because we're not really taught about any of this stuff. So
Totally.
we don't have an
right.
understanding of how to how we don't have an energetic understanding of what is actually occurring when we react in a situation, or when we take a breath and respond from a healthy place. Like it's a totally different frequency, and it
Right.
literally creates your reality. So, and it's no one's fault, because we're not taught about any of this stuff growing up. We're taught all of
Right.
the wrong stuff that doesn't matter. Like come on, let's learn about Lewis and Clark and this Columbus and all, Christopher Columbus.
Or,
Like
or, to,
what matters? What does that matter?
or just taught to, like, get a job, get in a bunch of debt, chase after money, chase after sex, chase after all these materialistic things,
Yeah, like
and then you're not
livestock. So
right.
these things, it then perpetuates us as part of the energetic food chain.
Right.
Right. Yes.
But you need to be in a healed state. So that's like, first, if you're very unhealed and you have a lot of trauma and wounds going back to your childhood or whatever, you need to heal first. And then then you're in a healthy state that you can actually
Which
do those things. But that's step one. Yeah.
a lot of that is the shadow work you were talking about, like in 2022. Like that's what was coming up for
Exactly.
lots of people. I mean, just from hosting the show, I know that. Like
Yeah.
so many people, like the inner child work and ancestral
Mhm.
trauma was surfacing, and it was being addressed,
Yeah.
and it still is this year. Uh, which brings me to my next question: reincarnation, the soul trap. Do you
Mhm.
think there's a soul trap? This is something that comes up
I
over and over.
know. Well, this is something because, again, my experience, because part of what I have done as in spirit release is that like my awareness is that when I have seen the soul leave the body, it's like this euphoric experience. And I've been shown like everything for a millisecond is black, and then it becomes this long stream of like rainbow white light, and then it goes out. Now, when there has been an energy that is needed to be, sometimes it's healing that needs to happen so they can cross over. The way that it's shown to me is a tunnel of light, and I'll call in angelic energies, and we'll kind of stand outside of the light, and then there will be energies that gather on the other side of the tunnel, and then the disincarnated being will go into the light. But the truth is something that can evolve. So that is a question that I am unsure of. What I have recently been shown and taught was that if we think about past lives, parallel future lives, everything is happening simultaneously. And I had this awareness every morning. I do this sunrise meditation where I'm building in different energetic things for everybody to follow and do within like 10-15 minutes, so that no one has a reason not to be in a grounded, energetically protected space. But when I was doing that, I was told to call in this energy, this being, Jophiel, who can help gather soul fragments. And as I was gathering soul fragments for myself, I had this moment where I was told there is no death. I mean, and we know that there, that consciousness is eternal, but that there literally was no death. And what I was then shown was all of these deaths they're occurring in all of these multiple dimensions in reality. So it's like whoever the embodiment that has the highest consciousness is like the winner of the game, as a way to explain it. So as I was shown this, I could feel all of these versions of myself simultaneously dying. And it was this moment of like, oh my God, this is so crazy. But I also understand, like, I have to harness everything, because my consciousness now may be the consciousness that has like the most awareness of this the space that we're in terms of this light versus darkness. So that was a piece of it, of collapsing everything. The other thing that I also just wanted to say, when you were talking about like all of these extremes where people are unconsciously feeding these things, what I have been told, especially whether it's Russia and the Ukraine, or whether it's Israel and Hamas, it is literally, whether it's Biden or Trump, whatever these polarities are, it is two sides, same coin. So to create the space of neutralizing your reaction, so it's not that you don't have an opinion, but you're bringing love into every moment, and you're really trying to cultivate your mastery, and also your guides will give you lessons 1,000 times a day. So every time you're triggered for whatever reason, this is a lesson and an exercise in mastery. And we are human, even if we are also divine. So we allow our human grace that whenever there is this moment, it might take 1,000 experiences before we realize that, okay, I can be accountable, I can ground, I can breathe, I can come back to a heart-centered space.
Mm-hmm. I agree with being tested all day long, every day, and that does happen. And I view the world that way. As soon as anything happens, I immediately know. I'm like, okay, there's something in this for me that I'm supposed to learn. And sometimes I'll catch myself and I'll react. I'll allow the trigger to take over, and I'll react in a certain way. It's not even extreme like it was when I was younger, but like is something as simple as like a negative comment on under one of our videos or something. Like it'll trigger you, but then I stop. I'm like, no, that's a vampiric, parasitic energy. Like I can't even connect.
Like today,
that person.
we just had one today.
Yeah, but like I have to remind myself that like I'm not gonna even like they're not going to perceive what I have to say because they're at this lower frequency already. Not saying I'm above them, but like some of these negative comments are coming from a lower vibration, and the only way for me to respond to that is stoop down to that level, and I have to catch myself. I'm like, no, I'm not even going to feed that, and this is part of the test. Like, if am I going to allow this to pull me off my path today and then swim in that dark energy, or am I going to stay above it? And I love that. It's constantly road rage. Another thing, that's something I've learned to really,
Oh,
like, I
totally.
don't have road rage anymore, but
Very
these are
real.
tests. I'm like, that's a test. I'm like, okay, how are you going to
Yeah.
respond in this situation, Tyler? Just breathe.
Do you mind if I share something with you, Tyler?
Please.
So as you're talking, I'm just like filled with so much love and gratitude for you, because and PS, I have it for you too, Aaron, and I'll share that too.
Oh, thank
But one of the things that I just want to acknowledge is I'm really aware of how epic your mission is, and that there is a container of human experiences that you embody that so many people resonate with. And I appreciate like the tremendous burden that is placed upon your heart and soul, because there is like, there's a palpable sadness to your energy field, because I'm aware of like the things that you endure and experience. So I want to thank you for volunteering to do what you're doing. And I also appreciate how beautiful it is that this partnership between you and Aaron, because Aaron's energy field is different. And that energy field, I think, is like this like real steady, bright light, and this tremendous empathy. So like whatever your human experiences are, you can't go too far into the darkness, because you have the soul brother with you who will anchor you and bring you back out. So it's really beautiful what the two of you have agreed to do. And I hope that's not too personal.
No, it's not. And I really
No, not
appreciate
at
you
all.
saying that. And I've always said that, like, Aaron, like, there's a balance there because we are different energies, and you're not the first person to say
We've
that.
we've been saying that since day one, and we've been getting comments like that since day one,
Right.
actually. So,
It's,
but thank you
it's
so much.
right.
That's
And,
yeah, I mean,
I don't know how to respond to the comment where you said my sadness is palpable, but in in a way you're right, because I like there is a lot that I go through, and people have heard me tell my stories, and there's been a lot of traumatic stuff, and I'm
you've
not
been through a lot of stuff.
I never try to play the victim to that ever. I always just try to
Mm-hmm,
learn from it, but
mm-hmm.
um there isn't like an underlying, like sometimes I really have to like ask myself like, man, what did I sign up for, what am I doing? But uh doing this show has been like therapeutic for me in a way. Like this is like saved my life actually, like because it's that every weekly reminder every week to that I'm doing something right, so I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I also want to just say that for what both of you have agreed to do and what you do with your platform in terms of really kind of challenging the way that people think about things, and bringing in a lot of conversations and a lot of perspectives, so that people's minds can be open or curious. They don't have to like come to the same conclusion that you come to. But I also feel like, you both are doing such high level spiritual work that there's the space of, with everything that you understand about the nature of reality, there's opportunities for both of you to just take a little bit of time out in your experience and day, for all the work that you do for everybody, for yourselves. So there are different things that you can do so that because we perform magic every day, we just don't realize that we do. So magic is our thoughts or intentions plus our emotions. So if we perform magic for ourselves, can really call into our lives all of the things that are really important to us. So I know that when I got on my path, I kind of made a deal. I will do this as long, and I needed like my family to be protected and safe, and I needed like this safe, loving container. So I would just invite, everybody who has a mission and who has agreed to it to also give themselves permission for that self-care, because the self-care and the self-love, etc., it doesn't have to be self-care in a traditional way. It's just kind of honoring that like I'll call in abundance so that I am, or I'll call in love, or I'll call in whatever it is that I know is needed to bring me to a state of homeostasis.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been incredible.
Yes.
I feel like we
Thank
really,
you guys so
I
much.
wasn't expecting half of the stuff we covered, but I think it was all beautiful. And I really kind of blown away at your the vastness of what you have experienced, because you really understand it. I feel that. So, and I guess that makes you fit to be a spiritual consultant. uh,
Yeah.
but thank you for
Absolutely.
joining us. Is there any last words you'd like to end on before we wrap this up?
I guess what I would just really encourage everybody, because I know that you both have a really wide audience. I would just encourage everybody to understand that it is now. Now is the time. So we enter the space, if you are doing shadow work or self-care or self-love, becoming more aware, allowing yourself to learn about discernment, to learn about your intuitive abilities, because what happens is we go into the flow, and we naturally go into the direction that is going to bring us universal peace, universal love.
Hmm. Yes, universal wisdom
Beautifully
too.
said.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh, well, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Can you please let our audience know how they can follow you or find you online or your website?
Yeah, thank you so much. So Kristin Bredimus, it's my full name.com. I see people individually. I have a very busy practice, so the likelihood of any sessions is unlikely, but I have a platform on Patreon, which is again Patreon in my name, and I do a lot of virtual teaching and meditations, and I'm actually getting ready to launch a 14-month program that is basically like, if you didn't get the memo about what this year is, to quickly catch you up to speed and to create these opportunities of spiritual self-mastery and self-care and co-creation and shadow healing on the collective as a group. So they can also find me on YouTube with my name, or on Instagram with my name. I'm the only one with this name, so it's easy to find me.
Nice. It is a unique
So
name.
everyone sign up for her Patreon.
Right.
Sign up for her Patreon.
We'll make sure to
It'll be
put
worth it.
those links in the description
We'll,
also.
we'll have
Yeah.
a link.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for tuning in. We love you all. We can't do this without you. And don't forget, tickets are now for sale for our conference next year, next May 13th through the 16th, Rebels of Disclosure. We can't wait to see you guys there. And make sure you take advantage of the early bird special, which ends on Black Friday at midnight. So if you want a cheaper price and a free t-shirt, I would jump on that. And don't forget to book your room as soon as possible, because the lodge is filling up quickly. That being said, we love you all. Have a great evening. Good night.
A lot of this information has been kept sort of locked up or kept undercover because of the invasion of the Smithsonian group way back in the 1880s.
What actually happens is it's not taken to preserve it, it's taken to hide it.
And about 4.5 miles from here, a cave was discovered. It's not really a cave as such, it's a man-made cavern system.
But how the hell do you get that much granite? Because the granite on the base of that damn near weighs what the dirt on the top of it weighs. Nobody knows what's underneath it. I've heard a theory that there's a spaceship underneath it.
There was copper and steel plated artifacts that depicted men in armor with shields and helmets.
Including right here at Cahokia, there were reported 2 giants with double rows of teeth and 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Extra vertebrae or extra ribs in their cage. These are different races of people. They're not just regular humans.
Definitely is a stone burial chamber, and there's a large body in it, bones. I would say 15 to 16 feet.
I saw different types of extraterrestrials here with the Native Americans.
The peoples of the Cahokia Mounds actually saw the Birdman as some kind of cosmic being and not a humanoid being.
So this Birdman was the last and the pure and the true of his kind.
So yes, there were rituals, or there were dances and celebrations, and people would dress up like the galactic beings that were visiting. But there were actual physical galactic beings that were visiting.